Some call it black magic, some call it sorcery, and some call it complete baloney. But no matter what you believe, necromancy, communing with the dead, has a long and rich history. From ancient Persia to Greece, Rome, and medieval Europe, this practice has captivated and terrified people for centuries. But it's not for the faint of heart. The lore surrounding necromancy can be downright chilling. So today, we're digging up everything you didn't know about necromancy. But before we get into the grave details, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and leave a comment letting us know which other morbid methods you want to hear about. For now, it's time to get serious, dead serious. The first time the idea of necromancy was mentioned in literature was in Homer's Odyssey. In this epic, the powerful sorceress Circe plays a crucial role when Odysseus is trying to secure his fate. In the story, Odysseus ventures to the underworld, where he performs a blood sacrifice, spilling the blood of sheep to attract the spirits of the dead. The spirit of the blind prophet Tiresias, known for his clairvoyance, is one of the first to appear. Tiresias provides Odysseus with guidance about the perils he will face, the challenges ahead, and even what awaits him when he returns home. This marks one of the earliest depictions of necromancy in Western literature. The epic's popularity and Odysseus's desperate attempts to learn his fate sparked much contemplation about the religious and ethical implications of communicating with the dead, a conversation that would continue throughout history. Necromancy, over time, became a deeply controversial practice. Many cultures believed that witches worked closely with the spirits of animals, plants, and the earth itself to summon powerful magic. But one tale that really stands out is that of Sextus Pompeius, a Roman figure who consulted the witch Darro to gain insight into the outcome of an impending civil war. Darro, known for her sinister reputation, performed a ritual in which they found a corpse with intact lungs, necessary for speaking, and brought it to a cave. The body was summoned, and its chilling message was clear: Pompeius would not survive the war. The foretelling wasn't much of a shock to Pompeius, but the ritual itself, a conversation with the dead, was an act of desperation as he tried to prepare for the worst. Unfortunately for Pompeius, his fate was sealed in the brutal history of that conflict. Now, if you ever find yourself attending a necromantic ritual, you should know that it's going to be anything but mundane. Think of it like a hot dog eating contest, but with an atmosphere of intense morbidity. The ritual typically involves everything you'd expect from summoning the dead: magic talismans, candles, strange symbols, and even wands. But once the theatrics are out of the way, the necromancer must choose a method to call the deceased from the other side. The most common settings for these rituals are melancholic places like graveyards or ruins, perfectly grim locales for an encounter with the afterlife. Some necromancers believed in sitting in silence for days in an effort to draw the spirits closer, while others resorted to more direct measures, like mutilating a corpse to hasten the process. The more gruesome, the quicker the spirit would supposedly rise. According to folklore, the key to raising the dead depended on the body's time of death. If the person had died within the last year, the physical body could be raised. Any longer, and only a ghost would be summoned. Ghosts, however, were known to overstay their welcome and often refused to leave once summoned. Renowned scholar Robert Malo outlined the best methods for a successful necromantic ritual. Once the body was removed from the coffin, its head needed to face east, toward the rising sun, in order to promote the conjuring process. A small dish containing burning wine, mastic, and sweet oil was placed by the right hand. And sometimes, for a more playful touch, 2 of the corpse's fingers were dipped into the liquid. The rituals varied across cultures, but they all shared the same goal: to compel the deceased to answer questions from the living. The reward for the corpse's cooperation: rest. The body would either be reburied or burned to prevent it from being reanimated again. Perhaps a locked coffin would be a good idea for any future deceased people in your life. The concept of contacting the dead and seeking knowledge from the afterlife is an idea that has transcended cultures. But what exactly did the dead know? Was it strictly metaphysical knowledge? Or could they provide tangible help, like improving one's luck in life or solving complex problems? Roman poet Ovid's Metamorphoses portrays the afterlife as a bustling underworld marketplace where spirits traded gossip and news. However, in other parts of the world, the concept of the dead had more ominous implications. Necromancy has always been considered a controversial form of black magic. In medieval Europe, many clergy members secretly practiced necromancy. They believed that necromancy was a tool to achieve personal and spiritual goals, including the ability to predict the future, find missing objects, or even solve crimes. Though some priests engaged in these practices, they did so under the belief that their training could help them perform these rituals correctly. However, for the Christian Church, necromancy was a direct violation of God's will. In Christian doctrine, the idea of resurrecting the dead was sacrilegious. After all, Christ himself had been resurrected from the dead, and any attempt by a human to replicate such an act was considered to be usurping God's authority. In medieval times, it was widely believed that only God had the power to raise the dead, so any attempts by mere mortals to summon the deceased were considered evil acts, powered by demonic forces. Paradoxically, many Christian practices, such as praying to saints or deceased loved ones, could also be seen as forms of contacting the dead, though that was accepted by the Church. Ultimately, necromancy was viewed as a dangerous path to dark power, one that many medieval people feared and avoided. If you're planning to perform necromancy, it's best to do it at the stroke of midnight. According to tradition, midnight is the most powerful time to commune with the dead. The dark and stormy atmosphere of the witching hour, complete with wind, rain, and lightning, is believed to amplify the presence of spirits. Rituals were often conducted under a veil of deep contemplation, with the scene illuminated only by dim torchlight or flickering candles. When the spirits were located in graveyards, magic circles would be drawn around the grave, and powerful plants like hemlock, mandrake, and opium were burned to create a mystical ambience. The goal: to summon the deceased from their eternal slumber and compel them to do the bidding of the living. Though this practice was widespread in ancient times, modern versions of necromancy have evolved. Today's necromancers aren't necessarily interested in reanimating the dead in the same gruesome way that their predecessors did. Instead, modern necromancy often involves seeking guidance from the spirits or receiving messages from the deceased to better understand life's mysteries. One example of this is the Afro-Brazilian religion called Quimbanda. In Quimbanda, there are various types of spirits, including a group of female spirits called paguas and male spirits known as exes, each with different powers. Practitioners of Quimbanda call upon these spirits to assist with specific tasks and challenges, providing modern necromancers with a spiritual path that's less about raising bodies and more about spiritual guidance. Furthermore, some contemporary necromancers have taken a more practical approach to divination. Rather than resurrecting the dead, they may use symbolic practices such as tossing bones, reminiscent of an ancient form of divination known as osteomancy. The position of the bones after they are thrown is interpreted to provide insight into future events or decisions. Despite the romanticization of necromancy in modern culture, the ancient practice of raising the dead has all but passed away. Today, people who claim to communicate with the deceased are often found on television, offering psychic readings and paranormal consultations. While many of these individuals may not practice necromancy in the traditional sense, they do provide a modern outlet for those who seek to connect with the spirits of the departed. But as for the ancient rituals of resurrection and raising spirits from the grave, those days have long since passed. Nevertheless, necromancy, in its many forms, still manages to captivate our imaginations. So, what do you think? Would you ever try to contact the deceased? Are there any dark rituals you'd like to learn more about? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other strange and spooky videos from our weird history.